I think it's at 5. I'm going to go ahead and call our meeting to order on May 19th, 2020, our special board meeting. Our agenda tonight is to get updates from the administrative team on all of our work related to managing our unusual, unprecedented circumstances surrounding COVID-19. So Steve, Matt,
Yes.
team, I'll turn it over to y'all.
So just a quick note, the first session on there is our communications one. I would draw your attention to, in particular, the second email that's in the content there, and that's graduation. So just a reminder that we have graduation planned for next weekend. So we're looking at Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Tate will just be Friday, Saturday. And it's that opportunity to provide some socially distanced in-person graduation opportunities for our students, give them a chance to walk, if you will, across the stage and collect their diplomas and do so with family members present. So that message has gone out. I have heard from, because I have a senior, I've heard from quite a few parents. They're really pleased that this opportunity is available for the kids. And they're hoping that this gives them some of that sense of closure that we've been talking about as a secondary admin team for a couple of months now here as we got into this process. So just draw your attention to that. Excited about that opportunity that's coming up. And sure, we'll get a little bit more into our workbook processes that you see also in the communication there. And let me click back over here to Kristen, see if there's anything else we need to add about communication.
Yeah, the other big update, good evening, everybody, by the way. The other big update for families was the schedule for students accessing their items in the building, and we've arranged for pickup next week. There's a schedule that's been announced for elementary, junior high, and high school pickup, as well as information that was shared with staff for staff to be able to access buildings this week. So all of that's happening over the next 2 weeks, which has been, we've received quite a few questions on that. So I think getting that piece, that next piece scheduled, parents were happy to see that information come out.
So Steve,
yes,
this might be the right place to ask this because you were talking about graduation, but what role, if any, do you want board members to have in that?
So the difficult part of the process, obviously, is that we're trying to adhere to responsible social distancing as part of that. And so we're actually trying to keep the number of people that are in the building during graduation as small as possible, both for the graduates and their families who will be cycling in and out of the building, and also for staff who will need to interact with people on a regular basis throughout that 3-day period, and trying to make sure that we minimize exposure. So at this time, there isn't an expectation for board members because obviously we're not going to be handing out diplomas on stage, nor are we going to be shaking hands up there. If you would like to be present at any of the graduation ceremonies, be inside the auditoriums to see any of the students as they're walking across the stage, you are definitely welcome to do that. If you would reach out to me, then what I'll do is I'll put you in contact with the building principals. We'll obviously, if we've got a lot of interest in it, we'll try to make sure that we've got people's presence divvied up, simply so that we don't have an extra number of people all present at one place at the same time.
And just one clarification. Oh, sorry, Janet. I just want to make one clarification. I think it was stated that graduation was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's actually Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Oh, sorry. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and not Thursday at Tate. Yes.
So just Friday, Saturday. Correct.
Is there, we still have a 10-person limit, crowd limit in Iowa, do we?
Yeah, so what they're going to do, Janet, is try to stage that, obviously, you know, when you think about the auditorium and the campus and the building. And so they'll try to stage how the graduates, as they come in with their families, are positioned. And so it doesn't become a mass gathering or that there's a lot of people in the same area. So the principals are all working together with their teams to try to figure out kind of, while it's not a processional like we think with graduation, you know, some type of a processional through the process. To keep it moving and to keep those large, so it doesn't become a large group gathering in that sense.
Thank you.
All right, if there aren't any other questions on communication, we're going to jump right into the education update. And I know that we've got updates from Matt and Amy and Diane, also from Adam on our technology piece. We'll give you a quick update on our plans for return to learn, and then we'll move into operations after that. So Matt, Amy, Diane, floor is yours.
Thanks. Good evening again, everybody, and thanks for continuing to meet with us and talk about the continuous learning options here in our response through the COVID pandemic as we've looked at those learning options. And so I think you're well informed what we're doing secondary wise with the learning opportunities with the voluntary model at the junior high, while some of the courses there are also in that required opportunity because they fit with the high school credit bearing guidelines that we've talked about. And so the high school courses, of course, in that required frame, we're approaching the end of the traditional school year here. And so some of the students that have participated to take grades and some of those things, we're nearing the course completion component of that as we get into next week. The things I guess I just wanted to highlight to you guys, because we've talked about it here a couple times, that I think we could come back with for some data points. Whether that's next week or whether that's the following week when we're at the conclusion of this, would be we think we can get some Canvas course engagement rates. We could also develop data around the number of kids and percentages of students that are participating in one or more courses, and then also the number of students that continued in a course for a grade. And so I do think we'll have some data to talk around and to work from with that beyond that anecdotal piece we've talked about prior in previous meetings. And so I've been working with Adam and his team to try to get those numbers, and we'll have those in, like I said, probably a week or two fashion here, so we could talk about some of those, because I've appreciated what Charlie's talked about a couple times, is not just trying to highlight all the hard work and the success that's going on, but also trying to learn from where we weren't as successful as we'd like to be, and making sure this is a positive experience for all students. And as we transition into the fall, what are those things to look at and do better and improve upon in this circumstance as well. Steve already talked about graduation, the 28th, 29th, and 30th, and we kind of took some questions there, but I think overall that's been received in a positive fashion. The one thing I might add for the graduation event is there will also be a video component done with that. If you've been following the messages or following the different schools accounts for how they've put out their logistical plans, you'll have seen that where it talks about the commencement address is still being given, and then also the opportunity for families to have their graduate represented in that takeaway package. And so each campus is taking a little different flair on that, or flavor on that. I think City Highs is going to be out prior to the 28th, 29th, and 30th. West and Liberty are talking about 5 with theirs a week or two afterwards to potentially include some of the footage from that day. And I believe Tate is as well. So we're doing the best we can. And I think it'll still be a special day, obviously, for those graduates. And we'll try to make it a memorable one the best we can in this circumstance. Otherwise, the other comments I have relate to the return to learn component, unless there's any questions. Secondary specific, I could take those now before we have Amy go.
Just one quick, Matt, the Tate graduation, that is at Tate High School then?
Excuse me, you cut out there, Paul.
Tate graduation, is that going to be at Tate High School?
Yes.
And that's 9 to 3 on Thursday and 9 to 4 on Friday. Is that right? Now I got to get my dates right.
Yeah, theirs is just the Thursday, Friday. Yes. I keep getting
Thursday,
a note here all day. My internet connection's unstable. Not that any of us have had to experience that, but it seemed like once we get to the punchline of Paul's question there, it kept doing that. So sorry if I didn't get the right part of that answered.
And then is Tate, the expansion, is that done, or will that, I'm just curious on, there's construction going on in there still?
Dwayne, I don't know if you want to hit on that. I don't think there's any concerns.
I'm actually texting with Dwayne. He's having trouble getting in the meeting, but no, I don't think that there are any construction concerns. With regard to
I checked in Ann with that, and if she thought there was anything, that was probably 2 weeks ago. I talked to her about that, and she didn't think there was a problem. So I'm assuming she would have reached out if she thought that was an issue, but she was comfortable going ahead with it there. And
maybe just an FYI. Yeah, maybe just an FYI for you, Paul, is they're going to be using the front of the building since they don't have an auditorium. So kids are going to proceed through the building, come out at the other end so that there's only a one-way flow of traffic in there. We're hoping for good weather because they're going to have their faculty outside to recognize the students as they come out the door after they've collected the necessary materials from inside the building. So the goal is to have people outside. That'll encourage social distancing and a one-way flow of traffic to get students through the building.
Thank you for your planning on those graduation activities. It really, really, really means a lot to the students, families, and the teachers getting ready to, and the principals getting ready to, wanting to honor their students. So, I mean, I know that was a lot of creativity and you still have some work to do, but just really thank you for putting the time into making that happen. It really, really means a lot. Yeah,
thank you for that, Janet. And I'll be sure to pass that on to the principals and, encourage the rest of you to do that too. I talked to them about that this afternoon, that was it's a big lift for them to do it differently. And again, pulled it off in a short amount of time and created a great experience, I think, for the circumstances we have. And so their teams have really rallied around it, but thanks for saying that. I appreciate that.
Okay, Amy.
Good evening, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. This week, just my update is that we continue to work on our 6 goal areas. On Monday afternoon, we met with the instructional coaches, elementary principals, and teacher librarians, like we have been, to roll out anything new or to just review expectations. And as we carried through a couple of things, we had a shorter meeting because we spent our large majority of the time getting an overview of our Wonders reading curriculum. So our 3rd through 6th grade teachers next year and our students will use the Wonders curriculum. And we spent about an hour and a half with the vendor that day and the consultants giving an overview. But a couple of highlights from that meeting then on the quick review time that we had was just to update on what we were seeing with our statistics and access to Clever and Dreambox and Lexia, as well as sharing out what our workbook pickup statistics looked like. We have seen the last couple of weeks our access to Clever, Lexia, and Dreambox tick downwards a little bit. And again, not sure what that's related to, if that's more related to the workbook pickup and kids are more interested in working through that, or if the weather, albeit not this week, but whether the weather is getting away in a little bit. But what we've seen is about 64% of our kids still going in through the Clever badge, 53% of our students accessing Dreambox, and 51% of our students accessing Lexia. And then as far as workbook pickup, I can't remember if I shared the statistics or if they were still coming in during last week's board meeting, but our range in our buildings out there is we've had anywhere from 70% of the student population picking up in some of our buildings all the way up to 98%. And as it's been touched upon a little bit already, we have staff accessing the buildings this week and next, as well as that student belonging pickup opportunities next week. And so those students that haven't picked up their workbooks will also have another way to try to get them home in their hands at that time. As I've noted, our last goal area that we're working on behind the scenes, it's not so public facing, is having all of our elementary teachers trained in Seesaw, and that's that learning management system. And that due date for completion was just this past Monday. So with that, I would take any questions.
I just have a comment, Amy, and everyone else. I've been in meetings in the last several days at the Center for Worker Justice involving parents who have kids in the system, and mostly in elementary school. Most of them are Spanish-speaking parents. They've limited English abilities at this point in their lives. And I have to say that they have actually had a very favorable experience with the receiving a Chromebook from the IT system, and getting their kids onto the Chromebook. So I just want to commend all of you for the work you've been doing and letting you know that that actually is working for at least some, families that I'm hearing about.
Well, that's wonderful to hear that, Charlie. The other thing that I don't promote so much or haven't shared is we have another product that we use with our English language learner students. It's, I think, roughly used by maybe 120 to 150 students, and it's called Imagine Learning. So it's focuses much more just broadly on language acquisition itself. And so for some of our learners, we do not have them on Lexia. We actually have them on a product called Imagine Learning. But thank you for that feedback. Appreciate it.
Otherwise, I think that's it for our team, Janet, unless there's other specific questions. We can jump to Adam whenever you're ready, unless there's other questions for us.
Any other questions? Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Matt. We'll go over to Adam. Thanks.
All right, quick stats update. We've deployed about 3,300 Chromebooks and provided internet to about 1,150 students and families. At this point, we are basically totally caught up on both internet and device deployments. And those, in both cases, will stay in place through the summer. So we'll continue to provide connectivity as well as those devices that are already deployed. Those won't be returning except for students who are leaving the district due to graduation or other reasons. One thing I do want to introduce tonight is a plan that we've been working on and is a little bit time sensitive. So I think this will probably come back to the regular board meeting as an action item next week. But that is for implementation of a one-to-one initiative at the K through 6th grade levels for the fall. So obviously with the closure situation, we've deployed, as I mentioned, about 3,300 Chromebooks, which represents about 45% of our K through 6 student population. For the fall, what we're looking at, and this is something we've actually looked at for a while, as in multiple years, both from the ESC as well as at the urging of the elementary buildings, whereas they've seen growth in use of software like Lexia and Dreambox and Imagine Learning and others within the regular classroom. They've had an interest in increasing that student to device ratio to the point that it's one-to-one, not to have kids on devices all the time by any means, especially at the lowest grade levels, but simply to reduce the barriers to making use of those devices and then also potentially to allow those devices to be used at home. So as we look at this, we had originally sketched out a plan for implementing K through 6 one-to-one in fall of 2021. We'd like to expedite that so that we're launching for fall of 2020. And this would be basically something where we would utilize the devices that we've already deployed to deploy to elementary students, plus devices that we already had deployed to the elementary buildings, and then an additional purchase of 3,000 Chromebooks that would make what would effectively be at that point a K through 12 one-to-one implementation possible. So that's really what we're looking at. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I think the one thing I would just add on to what Adam said, and that was a great overview, Adam, would be that I know our next item is that return to learn component. And really the idea with this is really, and I think he said it in there, is that this helps us problem solve any of those three previously learning model, whether it's a hybrid model or whether it's an on-site, as it was already in the long-term plan. And so not making a commitment to any one of those at this time, but just one of those advanced planning things we're trying to get out in front of as quick as we can.
Just one quick comment and a question for you, Adam. First of all, as Steve and some of the other team can remind you, it's not that long ago that we actually had to have this battle about going one-to-one at the secondary level. So I'm glad that it passed when I was on the board earlier. Otherwise, we would have been really scrambling in these times now to get people computers. But my question more to Adam and maybe Les or Chase, if we do, and maybe this is something you're working in or you can look into for the return to learn, if we do have to go to online again in the fall, is there any funds out there or ways that we can look at possibly giving the teachers some sort of stipend or some subsidized, or I can't think of the right word, but for internet access, because we're requiring them to use their home internet access, and some of those people may have limits on the amount of data they can use, and to be able to have to make them use it for work now. Has that been discussed at all?
We have discussed that. Chase, would you be able to speak to that one?
Sure. You pretty much summed it up, though. We've started to discuss that really, both internally and with Brady. It's something that Brady has talked to us about from his teachers. And so, Paul, it's something that is in the discussion, and we will continue to examine, trying to figure out what our methodology and approach would be to, identifying the teachers that would qualify, or maybe what that amount would be. In terms of the funding source, I think that might somewhat be dependent on what we come up with as the solution. So it's difficult to target one funding source tonight to tell you how that would be. But yes, it is something that we've talked about and is part of really that larger discussion as we look at all three of those options that Matt talked about in return to learn. But it's something we're conscious of, and we're keeping in the conversation.
Great. Can I ask a question around the devices? And I applaud the K6 and the acceleration of what had been already in the plan. But I'm curious, I think there's various funding sources and grant opportunities out there for districts, aren't there, for getting access to technology? And I just didn't know if we'd researched that or looked into it. I mean, budgets are tight. We're worried about what may come our way. I just didn't know if there's been any research on other funding sources for those kinds of technology purchases.
We have had discussions about that, and Les may be able to speak to this a little bit more, but we know that there's funding eligibility in the federal CARES funding. We know that there's potentially, we generally as a district don't qualify for some of the very targeted grants. I've reached out in a couple of cases, but we're not eligible for a number of reasons. But we know that there are funding possibilities in a variety of funding streams, including the CARES funding package.
So, Adam, I had a kind of a process question. One of my adult friends said something the other day that the district is not reusing or reissuing laptops used by seniors as they graduate. That is, when they turn them in, we're not reusing them. I'm assuming that that's not correct.
That is not correct. We plan to recollect those, reprep them, and redistribute them to students.
Thanks. Adam, any other questions for Adam? Okay, thank you. Who's next, Chase?
Sure. So on the facility side, one of the first pieces we had to share has been mentioned a couple of times. We did open up access a little bit more broadly here this week and next week as we try to get staff in to help us close out their classrooms for the end of the year, gather personal things that they might need that they haven't had access to for the last 7 weeks. We appreciate their patience and understanding with our focus on health and wellness as we focus on that. Of course, along with that, Dave McKenzie, Dwayne, Jeff, and their team have been working to make sure that we have the proper cleaning and sanitization going on. Jessica Jimerson and Laura Daly have been helping us on a health front as we do, health screenings for people that come into our buildings, and of course, we're practicing social distancing and limiting the number of those individuals that are in our buildings over the next 2 weeks, so that while people can get the things they need, we also do it in a way that makes sure that we keep health and safety at the forefront. The other big piece that came out last week in our communications was that we made the very difficult decision to go ahead and have our campuses remain closed through the 4th of July weekend. We know that there's feelings strong on both sides of that decision. Some that felt we should have just gone ahead and done it all summer long. Others that felt that we needed to start reopening given the governor's last proclamation last week. However, we feel like in the best interest of our students and our staff, that we need to be cautious in providing that broader access. And so we decided not to close the buildings for the entire summer at this point, but to provide us with a self-check-in point in a couple of weeks to see how things are unfolding and developing and whether or not we can begin to open our campuses up. We understand that there are long-reaching impacts in a number of areas with that decision, and so we take it very seriously. We continue to monitor and are not unwilling to revisit that decision if we feel it is necessary. Everything from looking at still the possibility of boys baseball and girls softball through the Athletic Association, the State Athletic Association this summer, to being a good partner to the University Hospital and providing childcare if necessary for essential workers. And so we work with the county. Kate Callahan's done a nice job of representing us at some of those meetings, and are willing to, again, work with folks. But as of right now, we feel like this is the best decision, and so we're going to move forward with our buildings and campuses being closed through that July 4th weekend. However, on a positive note, we are going to continue our meal service, and I think I mentioned that last week. A much improved Chase Ramey 2.0 I also see on the screen. Can probably talk more about that, but I did a quick calculation, and Allison, I believe that we topped 200,000 meals last week. Is that right? And I'll just turn it over to you for a quick comment.
Yeah, thank you. I just saw that. Sorry, I'm Chase 2.0. So yes, after Friday the 15th, we were over almost 212,000 meals. And after today, we're slightly over 225,000. So it would appear we hit our peak that week of May 4th, and we've been trending down a little bit. But in talking to my colleagues throughout the state, that seems to be a pretty widespread phenomenon right now. I think for a lot of reasons, but we still have a lot of families participating.
Those are really, Janet, the main pieces. I'm happy to talk more specifically about any of those as we really look to, we're kind of in 3 stages right now. We're closing out the school year from a facilities and operations standpoint, preparing for the summer, but also looking long range towards the fall as well. So a lot going on to help support the great work that our colleagues on the teaching and learning side are doing. But with that, open to new questions.
Yep, thanks for that, Chase. Thank you, Allison, for that huge amount of effort on all the meals. And I also just want to echo that the decision around keeping the buildings closed through, what did you say, July 6th?
I think the 5th is the Sunday. So okay. Yes.
I really appreciate how difficult that decision was for the administrative team, and the pros and cons and the advocacy you probably had from all angles on that. And I think I support the decision, safety first, and I think it's important. I think my humble opinion is being cautious and seeing how things play out. I would not want us to rush to open only to find there is a regression or a resurgence of virus spreading, but I do understand the impacts that has on families, students, teachers in our district. So I think I just wanted to share, I appreciate really fully the decision-making process that y'all went through, and that it was difficult. And also just wanted to express my support for the decision that y'all landed on, and the flexibility. Conditions change, gosh, daily, weekly, and the flexibility for y'all to be able to pivot as you need to. I think that's going to be really important. That kind of agility and responsiveness is something that we just have to have as a really strong muscle so we can be responsive. So thank you for that, Chase and the team. Appreciate that a lot. So what's next?
And I have a question on food.
Sure.
And Chase, maybe this, I don't know if it's the right place or not, but I was asked about the SNAP cards that kids will be getting. I know this doesn't necessarily apply to you guys, but I just wanted to confirm that that like includes some of our free and reduced, if not all, students here should be receiving those, because I know the article that I read about it, the officials were kind of saying like, hey, we're trying to spread the word so people don't throw the letter out thinking it's junk mail or fake. So can you just clarify on that?
Sure. Yes, and Paul, you're correct. That will be a positive impact for some of our families. Our understanding is those cards are still a couple of weeks away, probably from being distributed. The last that I heard, maybe Steve, you have more recent information than that on that piece. But while that is a positive thing that will hopefully help those families, it's not going to change our approach to nail service. Still going to do it daily. Still available to all children ages 1 to 18. But yes, that was good news to see that those cards are going to be provided, and they will be received by some of our families in the district.
So Janet, could I just follow up a little bit with the decisions to keep the buildings closed for a while longer? Chase, can you just comment on what who we were able to consult outside of the district, from the local public health folks or the state public health folks, others, experts?
Sure, Charlie. I mean, I think you kind of named them. We didn't necessarily gather a group of folks, beyond our participation at the county and understanding what other organizations inside our area are doing. Obviously, we pay close attention to what the university is doing, given its size and scope here in the community. And so, we look at that. We look at what the city is doing well. We tried to talk to the city on a number of occasions about what they're doing with some of their spaces. And so, I think in that sense, we would say local municipalities, maybe not all of them, but counties and all the different organizations that are involved in those meetings, following guidance from the CDC, the state health organizations, would be some of the ones that we would list as resources we look to when making the decision.
So, as I understand, you're saying that the CDC guidance would have been available to us through those other organizations?
Well, the CDC guidance is just available in general.
Right,
and really, we use the CDC guidance more for social distancing and kind of what are the PPEs and that folks should have in place. I don't know, you may have seen, they put out a chart here in the last couple of weeks of steps that schools should consider before they reopen for classes. But I think that actually came out after, or maybe the same day that we made this decision. But those are documents that are widely available, and so we try to review those resources too.
Okay, thank you.
Hey Chase, I've seen that sort of step-by-step flow chart, if you will, from the CDC reopening schools. Maybe it's helpful to send it out to directors if you have it handy.
Absolutely.
If folks haven't had a chance to look at it.
Will do.
And I think there's as I understand it, the CDC has two sets of documents. One is kind of an overview set of charts, and the other is a much more detailed and inclusive approach to a number of factors in regards to keeping people safe during this pandemic. And, there's been a lot of national discussion about whether or not the CDC's full recommendations have been readily available to all of us. So.
I have two quick questions. I would echo Janet's sentiment about the school closure decision and that I fully support it. Is that going to include the outdoor playground space? That's my first question. And then the second question, for the summer lunch program, are the same regulations that are in place now going to carry over, specifically the one about children being present? Because I think during summer feed, the kids have to be present, but right now they don't. Do we have guidance on that?
Sure. I'll take the first question and then let Allison speak to the summer feed. And Lisa, the answer is yes. The closure does relate to our outdoor playground spaces at this point. And that's one that we worked closely with the city on to try to mirror kind of what they're doing with their playgrounds. But yes, that closure does extend for those as well at this point. Allison, do you want to talk about the summer feed piece?
Yes, absolutely. So there are multiple waivers that are in place right now. So right now we have a waiver for non-congregate feeding, which allows children to take the meals off-site. As you mentioned, obviously they usually are fed in a group setting. There's also a waiver to allow parents to pick up meals and to waive mealtime requirements, which means that we can do the grab and go option, and we can also provide multiple days at a time. Those have all been extended through August, I believe. The area eligibility waiver, however, is not a nationwide waiver. That is only a state waiver, and that has not been extended past June 30th. So we have not heard anything, any new updates on that.
And Allison, what does that waiver affect? Like if that doesn't get extended, how will that impact our program?
That means that we would have a hard time qualifying some areas. So for example, the North Liberty area will be hard to qualify. They don't have any schools that are over 50% free and reduced. There's little census data that supports a pathway eligibility as well. We might be able to qualify like Holiday Lodge where we serve now. But, and for example, Man is at about, it's under 40% free reduced. That's another one that the attendance area for that changed. And so one of the possibly unintended consequences is that they wouldn't be eligible. And so we might be able to serve at some place like Forest View, but Man, although we know has a great need, would not technically be eligible under our typical summer guidelines.
Allison, do we have a fix for that we can do locally?
No. What we can do is the only really workaround would be to offer it in areas that were eligible. So for example, in North Liberty, really the only area that would be eligible would be the Holiday Lodge, Mobile Home Park, and Forest View, I believe, those students attend Man and have a high need, and we would certainly serve in those type of areas that would meet the eligibility requirements. And that's assuming that they don't extend the waiver. I'm still hopeful that they'll extend that area eligibility waiver as well. The state just has not been able to, they don't have any insight on whether that will be extended either at this time.
And who has to, is that a Iowa State Legislature, Department of Ed? Who needs to extend that?
So my understanding is the Iowa Department of Ed had to apply for a federal waiver, but it wasn't a nationwide waiver. It was Iowa applied and received that waiver.
State by state, yeah.
Yeah. And I did hear back from my Department of Ed consultant that said the Department of, as far as the food stamp benefits, the additional one, she said the Department of Human Services has submitted a waiver request to implement that in Iowa. The waiver request is currently under review in the approval process, and that DHS is collaborating with the Iowa Department of Ed to secure the free and reduced meals data needed to provide these benefits in eligible household.
The one piece I would add on Charlie and Lisa, your questions on the summer feed program is that we talked a little bit last week that it's going to look slightly different. And this is one of the reasons why. Also, from a capacity standpoint, and the fact that our nutrition services workforce, their contracts end at May 31, and so we do have to take a little bit of a different approach. We just haven't announced the sites yet because we don't want to add any confusion. We know we want to make sure that we're getting clear information, and so we'll put those out next week. But because we're having this conversation, we do want to be transparent in the idea that that there could be some sites that are slightly different than where we're serving right now, and we won't be able to support the same number of sites that we have right now. And so that number is going to come down, but we're hopefully going to be able to locate them in a way that we we see the same or similar numbers and ensure that whoever needs meals are still able to get them. But I think it is, coming on us to let you know that it will look a little bit different in terms of the sites and where they're located as we move into summer. And we're happy to have some more conversation on that next week. But again, since we're just on Tuesday and we have 2 more weeks at our current sites, we don't want to create confusion for families about where they're supposed to go to get meals.
That's a good approach. But I personally, and I'm sure other board members too, very much want us to keep availability as high as we possibly can.
Absolutely.
We do well.
And so do
Yeah.
we. Yep.
Allison, you had given us an update, like one of these early meetings when you were trying to reach out to, I think, do like refunds from like seniors' lunch accounts, and you heard back from some, including quite a few who were donating their money. And do we have any final numbers on that? Because I thought that was a pretty nice story.
I think the student account secretary, I just touched base with her this morning, and she's still reaching out to families. There are a few we haven't heard from. I know there's a Murley senior that we haven't heard from. And
I think he donated his already.
I'm just teasing you, Steve. So yes, I think we are still reaching out to families and getting back that information. So
Allison, he did want to know if he could buy extra cookies at the end of the year, because apparently that's a big tradition with those kids.
that is the truth.
I told him that was out this year.
That is the truth. We've had kids try to spend their last $80 on cookies in the last week of school. So we missed that opportunity for sure. I'll get him some cookies, Steve, I promise.
That's a pile of cookies.
That is a pile of cookies.
Like,
But yes.
I've actually seen that at my house before, so I know what it looks like.
I think to answer your question, I think families have been very generous, and we're continuing to get kind of that ongoing correspondence back and forth. And so I'll try to gather some numbers for you by next week.
thank you. Anything else for Allison or update on nutrition services? Are we ready to move on to our action item for the night?
We are.
All right. Yeah, so we have an action item to set the date of May 26, 2020 for a public hearing on the district's certified budget amendment for the fiscal year 2019-2020. Is there any discussion commentary on that before we seek a motion and second? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any further comment? Hearing none, Kim, we're ready to vote, and I'm not logged in, so I'm going to be an aye.
All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you very much. Okay, agenda setting. Next Tuesday. Let me see if I can pull the agenda up. We are looking to have a closed session, I think, before the meeting to have a follow-up conversation on the Lucas review. And then we do have a regular board meeting with a community comment, a consent agenda. We've got a couple of public hearings, a discussion, our continuous learning update, and then a couple of action items, certified budget amendment and approving the resolution for disposition of land at Hoover. I think we had talked about having an update from our board retreat on the 26th, just so that we can kind of give an update to the community on what we had conversations about last Saturday. So we can add that to discussions, I think. Kim?
Yep, I got it. Actually, I did add it, but I didn't update the attachment.
Right.
Got it.
Sorry.
And so, yeah, because I thought I'd seen it in the agenda center earlier this week. So, but anything else, folks, that we want to cover on the 26th?
I think we were going to get an update on solar.
Oh, right. Yeah, the PPA. Steve, are we going to be ready for that? I think you were going to get some information from Joe first.
Yeah, I've got that in the holding pattern just because I have not gotten a response from Joe yet on whether or not he's got his materials ready for you. And one of the things that he had said in our last correspondence was he wanted to make sure he got those materials to you well in advance of the board meeting so that you had a chance to read through those And at least at this point in time, we don't have anything yet. So we have that in our draft on deck circle, and we're really waiting to hear back from Joe before we put it on or hold it for the next one.
So we will have a goal for the 26th, but if it's not ready,
Yes.
we'll have to push it to the first meeting in June. Something else to raise with directors is the idea of returning back to second and fourth Tuesday board meetings. And I think we've gotten into a really good cadence with the updates from the administrative team on the planning for return to learn. And so I just want to get a feel from other directors if we're ready to start moving back into, after the 26th, back into our second and fourth Tuesday board meetings and not having these special board meetings in between. Just want to kind of get a poll of the team on that. Thoughts?
So would that mean all of the updates would move to one of our regular meetings, correct? Like the teach and learning, and if that's, as long as we're getting regular updates and.
Yep. Sorry, it's sort of hard to hear you, Christina. Didn't quite catch everything, but now I can't
Now
hear
we lost
you.
her completely. There we go.
I think
So I'll just share with Ina. Yes, you'll get both what we'll transition from the continuous learning update, which is finishing off this year, and a return to learn update as we start to look forward to next year.
It feels like we've gotten a lot more efficient with those, so I think we can fit them into those second and fourth board meetings.
I would just note that maybe if you do that, for those of you who have reserved your Tuesdays, who may also happen to be on the P&G committee, we might want to steal a couple of those first and third Tuesdays for policy and governance. I see Tina's got a thumbs up there, so just
good idea. Yeah.
just an FYI for those of you that aren't having enough fun with P&G, that maybe we could consider those too.
Other directors?
I asked the same question I was going to ask, which was, would we move it back to our normal start time or leave it at 5?
I'll just say personally, I like the 5 start date as we're doing the Zoom meetings. That's just me, but I can go with whatever the consensus and the majority of the board says.
I support keeping it at 5 for sure.
I'm okay with 5.
I know the 4 o'clock meetings beforehand are a little tough to
Yeah,
make.
those are tough. I agree, but 5 is a good sweet spot. The earlier ones are sometimes I have conflicts with work, but I like the 5 o'clock start date for the regular board meetings. So anyone else object to staying at 5 for these Zoom board meetings on the second and fourth Tuesdays?
For the Zoom meetings, I like the 5 o'clock start.
Yeah, that's good.
I am wanting to say that as we get into the decision-making process about which option we're going to eventually settle on for the fall, I'm wondering if we may want to have more frequent meetings as we really consider that decision really carefully. But I mean, to me, that's, Janet and Sean, I mean, I'm comfortable with your decisions or your judgment about if our decision-making needs a more frequent meeting other than twice a month.
For me, it's sort of what we were talking about with the administrative team being agile and responsive as conditions require. And so we get into some meaty conversations, Charlie, that the board needs to meet more frequently. I think we'll decide then. And then based on the feedback from tonight, it looks like we're agreeing to go back to the second and fourth Tuesdays. And so we'll have a meeting on the 26th, and then we'll get back into our regular cadence, and then conditions requiring, we'll add in meetings as we need to.
I will just note that we won't be able to give Steve a really solid send-off because there are 5 Tuesdays in July. So we're all going to have to say goodbye like 8 days early.
Oh, so remember that 5th Tuesday is supposed to be like a holiday. So those are always sacrosanct. You don't have a board meeting on those Tuesdays. So we'll have a little Zoom gathering maybe.
Oh my goodness. That's awesome. Okay, anything else on agenda setting, folks? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
I
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thanks, folks. Have a nice rest of your evening. Take care. See you soon. Bye.
Right now.
Bye.